The transport ship touched down on the landing platform with a low hum. Ethan Cole stepped out, the warm alien air brushing against his face, carrying scents he could not name. He had read about Valara Prime in the mission files, about its crystal cities and its people's strange traditions. But nothing had prepared him for what was waiting outside. A crowd had gathered near the platform, their skin shimmering in the sunlight like polished gemstones. Tall figures in flowing dresses stood in a perfect line, their eyes glowing softly. In shades of silver and gold, most of them were women, and all of them were watching him closely. The moment Ethan's boots touched the pale stone floor, the line of women moved as one, stepping forward in perfect rhythm. The first woman, taller than him and with skin like deep sapphire, approached. She stopped just an arm's length away, her golden eyes locked on his. Ethan expected a handshake, maybe a bow, but instead she reached down, grasped the edge of her long dress, and lifted it. It was not in a shy or teasing way, it was slow, deliberate, and ceremonial. Beneath the dress was not bare skin, as Ethan had feared, but a display of glowing blue lines that pulsed in patterns across her thighs and hips. They moved like living rivers of light, flowing under her skin in beautiful shapes. Ethan's breath caught. He froze, not knowing whether to look away or pretend it was normal. The woman held the dress up for a moment longer, the glowing designs pulsing brighter before letting it fall. Then she bowed her head slightly and stepped aside. Allowing the next woman to approach, she did the exact same. Thin dress lifted, glowing patterns revealed, and a graceful bow. Ethan's mind raced. Was this some kind of joke, or was it normal here? The men in his team behind him were shifting uncomfortably, trying not to stare, but unable to look away. The alien guards nearby didn't seem shocked at all. In fact, a few of them were watching Ethan, almost as if they were judging his reaction when the third woman stepped forward. Ethan forced a polite smile. He kept his eyes on her face, nodding slightly, though he could feel the strange warmth of the glowing patterns in the air between them. The crowd of aliens behind her murmured in low tones, the sounds musical, but impossible for him to understand. By the time the 10th woman had performed the same greeting, Ethan's heart was pounding. He didn't know if he had just been honored, insulted, or dragged into something far more complicated. The air around him felt heavier now, as if the planet itself was waiting for his next move. Finally, the last woman in line stepped forward. She was different from the others. Her skin was silver white, her hair a cascade of shining threads that swayed even without wind. When she lifted her dress, the patterns beneath were unlike anything Ethan had seen. They were not just glowing lines, they were symbols, shapes that seemed to shift and change when he looked at them. For a moment, Ethan thought he saw a human silhouette hidden within the moving light. It made the hair on his neck stand up. She let the dress fall slowly, her eyes never leaving his. Then she spoke, her voice like water running over smooth stones. "Welcome, traveler," she said, in perfect English. Ethan blinked in surprise. He had not expected anyone here to speak his language so clearly. The woman gave him a faint smile, as if amused by his reaction, before stepping aside. The crowd began to disperse, but a young alien woman with emerald skin and bright amber eyes stayed close. She wore a lighter, shorter dress, and her movements were quicker than the others. "I am Zyra," she said, her voice cheerful. "Your guide," Ethan exhaled, finally able to speak. "Zyra." "What just happened?" he asked quietly. She tilted her head, as if the answer was obvious. "They welcomed you," she said. "They revealed their life patterns. It is the greatest honor a Velaron can give." Ethan frowned. "It looked intimate," he admitted. Zyra laughed softly. "It is not in your way. It is a promise of truth, a way to show we are unarmed, healthy, and honest. It is how we greet those we trust." Her smile faded slightly. "But He did not return. The gesture, Ethan stiffened. I didn't know I was supposed to. Zira glanced around, lowering her voice. Some may think you were refusing their trust, and one of them? She was not just anyone. Ethan followed her gaze and saw the silver-skinned woman watching him from a distance, her golden eyes unreadable. She is Lady Shivara, Zira whispered, and she does not like to be ignored. A cold feeling settled in Ethan's stomach. He had been on Valara Prime for less than 10 minutes, and already he might have insulted someone important. He didn't know what Lady Shivara would do. But the look in her eyes told him one thing: this was not over. Asterisk, the sun on Valara Prime was brighter than Earth's, yet softer on the eyes. Its light poured through the high glass walls of the guest quarters where Ethan sat, still replaying the strange greeting in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the glowing lines, the shimmering skin, the golden stares that felt like they were looking straight through him. Zira entered quietly, carrying a silver tray with a steaming drink that smelled faintly of flowers and spice. She placed it in front of him and sat down across the table, her eyes studying him the way a teacher might study a nervous student. You still don't understand, do you? She said gently. Ethan leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. No, not really. I mean, I get that it's cultural, but shook his head. It felt like I was walking into some kind of private show. Zira smiled faintly. To us, there is nothing private about life patterns. She said, they are who we are, the truth beneath our words. She leaned forward, her tone taking on the seriousness of a story passed down for generations. Long ago, Velarans fought in many wars, armies of thousands clashing under burning skies. We learned the hard way that deception destroys trust faster than any weapon. She gestured to her own dress. So our leaders created the first greeting, a ritual where we reveal our life patterns to prove we carry no hidden weapons, no lies, no sickness. Ethan sipped the drink cautiously, its warmth spreading through his chest. He nodded slowly. So, when they lifted their dresses, they were showing you everything that matters, Zira finished for him. It is the same for men and women. Though in our history, the women carried the power of diplomacy. She looked at him for a long moment. And you? You just stood there, Ethan groaned, running a hand down his face. Yeah, I froze. I didn't know what to do. You should have mirrored them, Zira said simply. Not literally. Of course, humans have no patterns, but you could have. Shown your skin, a scar, something that proves you carry your truth openly. Ethan blinked. Scars. That's intimate for us, Zira tilted her head. And for us, your silence was intimate in the wrong way. He let out a slow breath. So now Lady Shivara thinks I insulted her. Zira didn't deny it. She is a noblewoman. Her patterns are known across the capital. When she offers the first greeting, it is more than respect. It is an invitation to a bond. Ethan frowned. A bond. Like friendship. Zira hesitated. Sometimes friendship, sometimes alliance. Sometimes. More, that last word lingered in the air. Ethan didn't know if he wanted to ask what more meant. Instead, he asked, and what happens if I failed to return it? Zira's lips pressed into a thin line. Then she will test you, and Velaran tests are never easy. He looked out the glass wall at the city below. Valara Prime was breathtaking. Towers of living crystal rising from streets lined with glowing plants, but under that beauty, Ethan could feel something else await. A set of invisible rules he didn't know. He wasn't just here to shake hands and smile for cameras. One wrong step, and he could offend a whole planet. Zira stood, walking to the balcony. You should know something else, she said over her shoulder, the patterns you saw on Lady Shivara. They were not just decoration. Ethan followed her out. What do you mean? They were shifting symbols, Zira explained. They are only shown to someone the speaker believes has a role in their fate. Ethan stopped cold. Why to her saying, she thinks I'm part of her destiny. Zyra shrugged lightly. Valorans do not speak of destiny, but we know when the light inside us reacts to another. She looked him in the eye. Whatever happens next, she will not ignore you. Before Ethan could respond, the door to the quarters chimed. Zyra opened it to reveal a tall male Valeran in a dark ceremonial robe. He carried a long staff carved from crystal and spoke in deep, slow tones. Zyra listened, her face unreadable. Then turned to Ethan. "Lady Shivara requests your presence," she said, her voice lower than before. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Requests or orders? Zyra gave the faintest smile. On Valara Prime, they're the same thing. They walked through the bright streets, alien eyes following them from every corner. Some of the stares were curious, others sharp, as if already judging him for something. He had not yet done. The palace loomed ahead, a fortress of shimmering glass that seemed to breathe with the wind. As they approached the gates, Ethan asked quietly, "What do I do if she does it again?" Zyra's golden eyes glinted. "Then you will answer her, human. In your own way, but you must answer." Ethan nodded slowly. Feeling the weight of what was coming, he had stepped onto this planet thinking his mission was about words and handshakes. Now, it felt more like walking into an arena. Only this arena didn't use weapons. It used truth, honor, and whatever he could reveal about himself before it was too late. The palace of Lady Shivara rose above the city like a shard of the sky itself. Its walls were made of clear crystal that shifted colors with every step Ethan took toward it. Glowing from deep blue to soft silver, guards in silver armor stood, motionless at the entrance, their eyes unblinking as they scanned him. Ethan felt the weight of their gaze, a silent warning that there would be no mistakes inside. Zyra walked beside him, her voice low. "Remember what I told you? She will test you." Ethan swallowed hard. "And if I fail?" Zyra didn't smile this time. Failing is not an option. Inside, the air was cooler, carrying the faint scent of something sweet and sharp. Valoran servants moved quietly along the walls, their long robes whispering against the smooth floor. The throne room was unlike anything Ethan had seen. It wasn't a single hall, but a circle of open platforms suspended over a deep pool of glowing water. In the center stood Lady Shivara, her silver-white skin reflecting the light like liquid metal. She turned slowly when they approached, her golden eyes locking on him like a hawk spotting prey. "Human," she said in a voice that was both calm and commanding. "You stand before me without returning the honor I gave you." Ethan took a step forward, his heart pounding. "I didn't understand the custom," he said honestly. Her gaze sharpened. "And now that you do?" Ethan hesitated, the silence stretching between them. Lady Shivara stepped closer, her movements so smooth they felt unreal. She stopped only a breath away. Then, without breaking eye contact, she grasped the hem of her long silver dress, slowly. Deliberately, she lifted it, revealing the glowing patterns beneath. This time, Ethan could see that they moved like waves in a storm, symbols appearing and vanishing as though alive. The light from her skin reflected off the crystal floor, surrounding them in shifting colors. The room went utterly silent. Even the servants had stopped moving, all eyes fixed on Ethan. He could hear his own breathing, feel the heat of the moment pressing in on him. Zyra's words echoed in his mind, "You must answer her." But how? Humans had no life patterns, no glowing marks to show. If he copied her gesture, it would be meaningless, maybe even offensive. He needed something real, something that told the truth about him. Ethan took a slow breath, then reached up and removed his jacket. The air in the room seemed to tighten as he rolled up his sleeves. Across his forearms were scars, some thin and pale, others deep and jagged. They told the story of years spent in dangerous places, helping people, surviving battles that left their marks. He held his arms out, palms open, showing them to her and everyone watching. "These," he said in a steady voice, "are my patterns. They tell where I have been, what I have survived, and who I am." His words echoed through the hall, followed by a long, heavy silence. Lady Shivara studied him, her golden eyes unblinking. For a moment, Ethan wondered if he had just made the worst mistake of his life. Then her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You understand more than I thought." "Well," she said softly, "your patterns are not of light, but of survival. They are truth." The servants began to whisper among themselves, some nodding, others watching with wide eyes. Zyra's shoulders relaxed slightly. Though she kept her gaze fixed on the noblewoman, Lady Shivara let her dress fall, the shimmering fabric swaying as she stepped back. "You have passed the first trial," she said, "but the next will not be so simple." Ethan felt a mix of relief and dread. Next trial. Shivara's expression shifted into something unreadable. "You will attend the great welcoming in the capital. There you will be greeted by not one, but many, and you must return each honor without faltering." Ethan's stomach tightened. This sounded less like a ceremony and more like a gauntlet. "Why me?" he asked, unable to stop himself. Her golden eyes glimmered. "Because the light within me recognized something in you." Zyra stepped forward. Bowing slightly, "We will prepare," she promised. Lady Shivara dismissed them with a wave of her hand, but her gaze stayed locked on Ethan until he left the room. It felt less like she was looking at him and more like she was looking into him. By the time they stepped back into the bright streets, Ethan's mind was still spinning. "What just happened in there?" he asked. Zyra glanced at him. "She accepted your truth, but she also marked you." "Marked me?" he repeated. "Yes," Zyra said. "From now on, everyone who greets you will know you carry her attention, and that is both an honor and a danger." They walked through the city as Velerans turned to watch them. Some bowed slightly, others gave him long, appraising looks. Ethan realized the test had already begun, and the great welcoming was still ahead. Whatever Lady Shivara saw in him, he would have to live up to it, because on Valara Prime, failure was never forgotten. The days before the great welcoming passed in a blur. Zyra trained Ethan every morning in the small courtyard behind the guest quarters. She explained the meaning of different Velaran patterns, the subtle gestures that showed respect, and the dangers of copying something without understanding it. "On Valara Prime," she said, "every movement means something. Even the tilt of your head." Ethan tried to memorize it all, but he knew he would never master their traditions in time. On the morning of the ceremony, the streets were already alive. Banners of shimmering cloth hung between the crystal towers. Glowing softly in the sunlight, crowds moved toward the central hall, their voices blending into a low hum of excitement. Zyra walked at Ethan's side, her face serious. "This is not just a welcome," she said. "This is a stage, and you are in the center." The hall itself was massive, built in a perfect circle with open archways that let the warm breeze drift through. At the center was a raised platform surrounded by shallow pools of glowing water. The light reflected off the ceiling, making it look like the sky itself was trapped inside. Dozens of Velaran women stood in a wide half-circle, each wearing flowing dresses of different colors: sapphire, gold, and crimson. Each of them carried the same quiet authority as Lady Shivara, though none quite matched her presence at the far end of the hall. Shivara herself stood watching, her golden eyes steady on Ethan. The ceremony began with a low chime from a crystal bell. One by one, the women stepped forward, lifting their dresses to reveal their life patterns. Some patterns were simple streams of light. Others were complex symbols that seemed to move and change each time. Ethan nodded respectfully and stepped forward to answer them. He had decided earlier that he would not try to copy them or hide behind rehearsed gestures. Instead, he would give them something human, something real, when the first woman approached. Ethan removed one glove and held up his bare hand, showing a burn scar across his palm. "This is from saving a friend's life," he said. She studied it for a moment before bowing her head and stepping aside. The second woman came forward with patterns that swirled like a storm. Ethan responded by pulling back his sleeve to show a long, thin scar along his forearm. "This is from when I was caught in an explosion while protecting others." The crowd murmured at his words. By the fifth greeting, the atmosphere in the hall had changed. What had begun as polite observation was now focused attention. The Velerans leaned forward slightly, listening to the short stories he gave with each mark he revealed. He noticed Lady Shavara's lips curve into the faintest smile. Then, halfway through, something unexpected happened. A young Valeran woman approached, her life pattern soft and faint, barely glowing. Ethan realized she was nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted her dress. Instead of simply showing a scar, Ethan took a step closer, knelt to her height, and pressed his palm lightly to the light on her leg. "Your light is strong," he said quietly. "Even if you don't see it." The woman's eyes widened, and for a moment her patterns flared brighter. The crowd reacted instantly. Soft gasps, a ripple of whispered words. Ethan wasn't sure if he had broken protocol, but he didn't regret it. When he stood, he saw Lady Shavara watching him more intently than before, her eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in thought. By the time the last woman greeted him, Ethan had told pieces of his life to almost all of them. Some marks were from battles, others from accidents, one from a simple kitchen fire. Each story was short but real, and the hall seemed to respect that. The final chime rang, signaling the end of the greeting. Ethan stood in the center of the platform, the women returning to their places. Then Lady Shavara stepped forward, her dress catching the light like liquid silver. She lifted it one last time, revealing the same shifting symbols he had seen before. But now they seemed sharper, brighter. As if they were responding to him, Ethan didn't hesitate. He removed his jacket entirely, exposing the scar across his shoulder where a bullet had once passed through. "This is from when I refused to leave someone behind," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "It is my promise to never turn away when I can help." For a moment, the hall was utterly silent. Then the sound began. Low, steady notes from crystal instruments, the Veleron sign of approval. Lady Shavara let her dress fall and stepped closer, speaking so only he could hear. "You have turned the first greeting into something new," she said. "Valara will not forget this." As the crowd began to disperse, Zyra leaned close and whispered, "You've done more than impress them, Ethan. You've changed the way they see humans." Ethan glanced back at Shavara, who was still watching him with that unreadable expression. Somehow, he knew her tests weren't over. If anything, they had just begun. The great welcoming had ended, but its echoes still lingered in the capital. Everywhere Ethan went, Velerans stopped to watch him, some with curiosity, others with quiet respect. Yet not every gaze was friendly. Some eyes followed him with sharpness, carrying the weight of old pride wounded by his sudden rise in favor. In the marketplace, whispers trailed behind him. "That is the human who stood before Lady Shavara." One voice said, "They say she allowed him to touch a first greeting." Another murmured. Ethan could feel the air tightening around him with each step. Zyra walked close, scanning the crowd, her golden eyes narrowing whenever someone stared too long. By the third day, the tension began to show. A group of Veleran men blocked the narrow path near the crystal bridge. Their dresses were shorter, built for movement, the faint glow of their life patterns pulsing in slow rhythm. The one in front, tall with dark green skin, stepped forward. "You are the human who thinks he can change our ways," he said, his voice low but hard. Ethan kept his tone calm. "I didn't change anything. I only answered in my own way." The man's eyes glinted. "And that is the insult. You make the women look at you instead of us." Before the situation could turn worse, Zyra stepped. Between them, her voice cold. He is under Lady Shavar's protection. You would challenge her choice. The man's gaze flickered, but his pride kept him from stepping aside immediately. Finally, he moved with a slow, deliberate motion, the others following as they passed. Ethan caught the faintest hiss of words in Valoran's something about watching him closely. That night, Zyra brought him to a quiet balcony high above the glowing city. You should know, she said. What you did in the Great Welcoming has shifted the balance. Ethan leaned against the railing. Shifted it how? Many women now see humans as worthy of their highest honors, Zyra explained. And many men see you as a threat, he sighed. I came here to help build peace, not start a gender war. Zyra's lips curved slightly on Valara Prime. Peace and politics are never far apart. She looked out at the lights below. Some will try to test you again, not with rituals, but with traps. The first trap came sooner than Ethan expected. The next morning, an invitation arrived ornate. Script on silver parchment, sealed with the mark of the High Council. It was for a private dinner in the council hall, tended by nobles and envoys. At the bottom, in flowing golden ink, was a single line. Your greeting will be expected, Zyra. Frowned as she read it. This is not a dinner. It is a staged challenge. Ethan glanced at her. Meaning? Meaning, she said slowly. They will arrange it so your answer fails, so they can say the Great Welcoming was a mistake. When they arrived that evening, the council hall was lit with hundreds of floating lanterns. The long table curved like a crescent moon, every seat filled with important faces. Ethan was led to the center seat opposite the High Chancellor, a tall, thin man with silver markings around his eyes. The Chancellor's voice was smooth but cold. Welcome, human. We have heard much of your talents. The first course was served, but before Ethan could take a bite, a noblewoman to his left stood. Her dress shimmered in gold, and her life patterns flared bright. She lifted her dress in the first greeting, her expression unreadable. Ethan started to respond, as before, moving his glove to show a scar, but she suddenly stepped back and said loudly, "That is not the greeting we were promised." The room fell silent. It was a setup. He hesitated now. They could say he had refused. Ethan took a slow breath, remembering Zyra's warning instead of retreating. He stood, removed his jacket, and slowly unbuttoned his shirt collar. He pulled it aside to reveal the jagged scar across his shoulder. "This mark," he said clearly, "is from when I shielded a stranger from death. I did not know their name, but I knew they needed me." The noblewoman's eyes widened slightly. She had expected him to falter, not stand taller. The Chancellor's lips tightened, but the rest of the room stirred with low murmurs. Ethan finished by bowing slightly. "This is my truth, and it is the only one I have to give." The tension broke with a soft chime from somewhere in the hall. It was the Valoran sign for an accepted greeting. One by one, more women at the table stood to greet him, and one by one, he returned their honors by the end of the meal. The Chancellor's expression had grown darker, but he said nothing. On the way back, Zyra walked beside him in silence for a long while. Finally, she said, "You survived their trap." Ethan gave a small smile. "I'm starting to see a pattern here." Zyra glanced at him. "So am I. And the next one may be the most dangerous yet." Far above the city, in a private chamber of the council hall, the High Chancellor spoke quietly to a shadowed figure. "If the human passes the next trial, we may lose the control we have held for centuries," he said. The shadow replied, "Then we will make sure he does not pass." The morning of the grand ceremony arrived with a sky painted in gold and violet. The entire capital seemed to hum with anticipation. Every street was draped in banners of glowing fabric, and the air carried the faint, musical chime of crystal bells. Ethan stood on the balcony of his guest quarters, looking out over the city. He could see the towering crystal hall in the distance, its roof reflecting the sunrise like a mirror. Zira stepped beside him, her expression unreadable. "Today, the whole planet will watch," she said quietly. Ethan took a deep breath. "And if I fail?" Zira met his eyes. "Then the Chancellor will use it to undo everything you've built here." By midday, they arrived at the Crystal Hall. It was the largest structure Ethan had ever seen. Its arches rose so high, they disappeared into the sunlight. Thousands of Velerans filled the great plaza outside, their life patterns glowing faintly in the light, the moment Ethan stepped out of the transport. The crowd parted to let him through. Some reached out to touch his arm. Others simply bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Inside, the hall was a marvel of alien beauty. The floor was made of polished crystal that reflected every step above. Strands of light floated like ribbons in the air. Weaving between the tall pillars, at the center stood a wide platform. Surrounded by shallow pools of glowing water, on the far side, the High Chancellor sat in a raised seat. His silver-marked eyes fixed on Ethan. Lady Shivara stood to one side, her golden gaze steady, her presence both protective and challenging. The chime of the crystal bell rang, signaling the start. One by one, the first of 100 Velaran women stepped forward. Each lifted her dress in the first greeting, the glow of their patterns filling the hall with shifting light. Ethan returned each honor with the same calm strength he had shown before. Sometimes it was a scar, sometimes a story, sometimes both. The crowd reacted differently to each soft murmurs for bravery, quiet nods for honesty, and once, a ripple of surprised laughter when he told of burning himself cooking his first meal. But the real challenge came halfway through. Without warning, the Chancellor rose from his seat and gestured to the remaining women. Instead of coming one by one, they began to move forward together. Dozens of dresses lifted at the same time, their patterns glowing in unison. The light was overwhelming, a living storm of colors and symbols. It was impossible to focus on just one person, and Ethan realized this was the trap if he hesitated or failed to respond to even one. It would be seen as a refusal. For a moment, the hall seemed to hold its breath. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't answer each individually. They had forced him into a choice. And then he remembered something Zira had once told him on Valara. "Prime, the highest honor is to give your truth to all, without choosing one above the rest." Ethan stepped to the very center of the platform and removed his jacket. Then, in one smooth motion, he pulled off his shirt. Gasps echoed through the hall, not of shock, but of curiosity. His chest, arms, and back carried the map of his life. Scars of battles, faint lines from old wounds, the uneven mark of a bullet's path across his shoulder. He spread his arms wide so all could see, his voice carrying clearly. "These are my patterns," he said. "I cannot show light as you do, but I can show every moment my body stood between danger and those who could not fight." He turned slowly, making sure no one was left unseen. "This is my truth, yours to witness." The silence was deep and heavy, broken only by the faint sound of the glowing pools around them. Then, one by one, the women let their dresses fall and placed their hands over their hearts, the Velaran sign of acceptance. A deep chime rang out from somewhere above. Lips curved into a rare, full smile. Even the Chancellor's expression flickered, though it was gone in an instant when the ceremony ended. Ethan left the platform to the sound of thousands of voices in the plaza outside. The crowd was chanting not in his language, but the tone was unmistakable. Zero walked beside him, her steps quick to match his. "You turned their trap into their moment," she said softly. "They will speak of this for generations." Ethan glanced toward the Chancellor's seat. Now empty. "He won't give up," Ethan said. Zira's golden eyes narrowed. "No, but after today, he will have to do more than words, to bring you down, far above the plaza, in a private chamber." The High Chancellor stood with his hands clasped behind his back. "He has passed every trial," he said to the shadowy figure beside him. The shadow's voice was low and sharp. "Then it is time to the night after the grand ceremony." The capital should have been at peace, but Ethan could feel something heavy in the air, like a storm waiting to break. From the balcony of his quarters, he could see the crystal hall glowing in the distance. Its light softer now, almost watchful. Zyra stood beside him, arms crossed, her golden eyes fixed on the streets below. "They will not let this end quietly," she said. "The Chancellor has too much to lose." Her words proved true the next morning. Before the sun had fully risen, a messenger arrived tall, dressed in dark ceremonial robes, his life patterns hidden under thick fabric. He handed Zyra a silver scroll sealed with the mark of the High Chancellor. She read it quickly, her jaw tightening, then passed it to Ethan without a word. The message was short, but the meaning was sharp. "Final greeting today at midday, in the council arena, before the eyes of the planet," at the bottom. Another line in smaller script, "Failure will end your place here." Ethan folded the scroll slowly. "He's going to try to humiliate me in front of everyone." Zyra's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed worry. "The final greeting is rarely given when one side wants to see the other broken, and if I pass?" Ethan asked, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Then you will be bound to Valara forever." The council arena was nothing like the halls or palaces Ethan had seen. It was open to the sky, a vast circle of stone surrounded by tiered seats that climbed high into the air. By midday, every seat was filled, the noise of the crowd rolling like distant thunder. At the center stood the High Chancellor, his silver-marked eyes cold and unreadable. Ethan stepped onto the stone platform, the heat from the sun pressing against his skin. The Chancellor raised his voice so all could hear. "Human," he said, "you have answered many greetings. But truth is not told in fragments." He gestured to a small stand in the center of the arena. "Here, before Valara, you will reveal your whole truth, your deepest mark, your greatest wound, your purest intent." The crowd hushed instantly. Zyra's voice echoed in Ethan's memory, "You lonely give what is real." He stepped forward, his heartbeat steady despite the weight of thousands of eyes. Slowly, he began removing his jacket, then his shirt, letting it fall to the stone. The sunlight touched every scar on his chest, shoulders, and arms. But he didn't stop there. He knelt, unlacing one boot and pulling it off, then the other. Finally, he rolled up the leg of his trousers to show an old wound along his calf, the deep, uneven scar from shrapnel years ago. "This," he said, his voice carrying through the arena, "is my truth. Every mark, every moment my body stood between danger and someone else." He rose to his feet, looking directly at the Chancellor. "You want my greatest wound." Ethan continued, "It is not on my skin, it is knowing I could not save everyone." His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't look away. "And my purest intent is simple. When I stand before someone in need, I will never turn away." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, in the upper tiers, a single Valeran woman stood and placed her hand over her heart. Another followed, then another, until the entire arena was filled with the silent gesture of acceptance. The sound came. Next, deep, resonant chimes ringing from hidden crystal bells. It was the sign of an honored truth. Lady Shavara stepped forward from the edge of the platform, her golden eyes bright. "You have given more than we asked," she said softly, "and more than we deserved." She turned to face the crowd, raising her voice. "Valara will remember this day as the day a human gave us his whole truth." The Chancellor's expression was like carved stone, but there was a tightness in his jaw. He could not deny the will of the people, not when the sound of the chimes still filled the air. Without a word, he turned and left the platform. The shadow of his robe trailing behind him, Zira came to Ethan's side. Her smile, small but real. You didn't just pass. She said, you made them yours. Ethan glanced at the crowd, still watching him. I didn't come here to own anyone, he said quietly. Only to be honest. Lady Shavara stepped closer, her voice low so only he could hear. And that is why they will never forget you, as they left the arena. The chant began not in words he fully understood, but in tone and rhythm. It was the same as after the grand ceremony, but louder now. Zira leaned toward him, translating softly. They are calling you bearer of the open light, Ethan let the words sink in as they walked out into the bright streets for the first time since stepping onto Valara Prime. He felt no weight on his shoulders, only the strange, warm truth that he had found a place here not by force, not by power, but by showing who he truly was. And somewhere deep in the city, the High Chancellor sat in his shadowed chamber, staring into the light pouring through the window for the first time. He wondered if a human might actually change Valara forever, give him one he cannot survive.